All right, we're going to get going. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Bing. As most of you know, I'll help lead us through the meeting tonight. A couple things, as Leah was just saying, the meeting's being recorded. We are doing a virtual meeting. Do your best to project, not just for the people that are listening in so they can hear any comments or questions you have, but also we have some people sitting in our audience. And if you're talking this way, they may not be able to hear you. For our visitors, I say this at every meeting, these meetings are open to the public, but they are designed for the quarter committee members. So the discussion, the questions will be based around the members sitting around the table. But we will save a period at the end for public comments. So if any of you did want to make a comment, we will give you that opportunity towards the end of the meeting. I'm going to come back on and kind of do some introductions and go over our meeting format. But what we like to do at the beginning of every meeting is go over some Delaware safety statistics. We want to make sure that we're talking about this at every meeting, not just this meeting, but every meeting DelDOT does. We like to lead with this because it is so central to everything DelDOT does. So Jen.
Hi, everybody. This is a really great group. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Again, we really appreciate your feedback and being able to attend these meetings. Trust me, I know everybody's so busy right now, but again, thank you for being here. Starting off with our kind of our mission statement: every trip, every mode, every dollar, every one. And again, that's the one that's always near and dear to me. Being from Delaware and making sure that we are being as representative of all Delawareans, specifically for Sussex County tonight, but for the most part, everybody. Next slide. So, oh, we don't have updated ones.
It's next.
Is it next?
It's summer 2022.
I think we saw this last time, so let's go ahead to the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the map. That's why. I'm sorry. Okay, so 165 fatalities in 2022. As you can see, we have the segment that we're discussing tonight, which is 9 between 113 and SR1. Some clusters of fatalities in that area. So heartbreaking. It's really getting worse. 2023 already we have 11 fatalities. It's starting to hit closer to home for me. I'm getting notifications of friends and families that have lost loved ones. Milton lost a young person due to speeding in a bad curve in the road. It's tragic. So please, again, seatbelts. Tell people to stop speeding. No one's life is worth having to get there faster. I still can't understand that concept. I just get out of everybody's way because I'd rather just get there alive. So am I done? Yeah, so that was Andrew's turn. And I wanted to just throw in real quick something of note. I really want to thank you for being here, especially for those Eagles fans from last night. Sorry for your loss. It was a really good game, and maybe next year. So, Andrew.
Wow. That's my lead in.
Go Birds.
Appreciate that. But, just following up on what Jen said regarding safety, when we bring a group like this together, spend some time with you, create these working groups, these committees, whatever you want to call them. They do serve you serve as a conduit for us to get the word out to the people And so, we can only do so much, just us talking, but we feel like by the fact that there's 10, 15 of you here, that message spreads regarding safety. So that's one of the reasons we like to do this. So we hope you'll pass that along to anyone you might know. So regarding the meeting tonight, this is our third meeting of our quarter committee process. We started out with more of a general overview type meeting. Our second meeting, we focused on SR 16, and today we're focusing on 9 and 404 from 113 all the way as we get close to Route 1. So that is our focus for tonight. So we know we have some people who are more 16 centric that really contributed a lot in our last meeting. We're looking for everyone to contribute, but we're certainly looking for people who spend a lot of time in and around 9404 to really, provide us with a lot of feedback tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Steve here to do our presentation. We're going to, repeat a little bit of our toolbox. We're then going to go through the quarter. We're going to do things a little differently tonight than what we did the last meeting. We're just trying to change it up. There's no good reason. We thought last meeting went well. We were very happy with the small groups. the feedback that we received, we decided for this meeting, we're gonna do our feedback session as one full group. We're not gonna break off into the small groups. We're also, instead of giving you kind of the entire quarter at once and then breaking off to discuss it, and you try to remember, what happened 30 minutes ago? I don't remember that presentation. We're gonna go kind of segment by segment. He's gonna kind of do a deep dive on that segment. Then we're gonna break into discussion about that segment, do the next segment and so forth. So just to give you a heads up of what, you should be looking for here. So, okay. And then you'll see at the end, we are gonna, as I mentioned, have time for public comment. If anyone does want to ask a question or make a quick comment, and then we'll talk about next steps, including our final meeting of this process, as well as public workshop and so forth. So I do want to go through, we're still kind of getting to know each other. I think it's worth it to do it quickly. And again, I'm asking you, maybe this is just a test to get you to project your voices ahead of time. But I do want everyone in the room to introduce themselves. So again, Jen, why don't we start with you and we'll work around. I already introduced myself, Andrew Bing. Jen?
Jen Sinelli Miller, Del Planning.
Steve Harr, Woodland Record.
Leah Cassandra, Whitman Record.
Glenn Marshall, Sussex County EMS.
All right, I do burn.
Talk loudly, people.
Danny Rolls, I work for a local truck driver. George Cardwell, I represent the town of Milton.
Everybody, Scott Thomas, Southern Delaware Tourism.
And Kevin Yingling, Delaware Electric.
Sean Tidwell, Transportation Supervisor for the Name River School District.
Rich Creasy, Transportation Supervisor, Cape May Local School District. Brian Reynolds, Milton Fire Department.
Jeff Wells, Carl.
Jocelyn Hometown, Georgetown. Stephanie Moody, Sussex County Association of Realtors.
Jamie?
Amy Woods, Sussex County Planning and Zoning. Joe Esposito, GDI.
Christy Bonawall, GPI.
I'm Frank Derringer, I'm the pastor of Old Path Church of Christ on Redden Road. Some kind of stuff in between Route 60 and Route 9.
You are one of us. Come forward,
Like-
please.
like it's right. Come on now. Yeah, right here. You can put a sewing machine and we'll see what happens at the end of the night. Higher. You're a member of our board of committee. Sorry about that.
You are a stakeholder. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. No, thank you.
I'm Jared Kaufman, I'm a planner for Dark.
Great. Thanks everyone for doing that. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve again. If you have questions, we'll pick a good time, but we will entertain questions as we're going through. Again, some of this is a review. Some of you weren't here last meeting, so this will be the first time you hear this. But this is really going to be the fuel for the discussion that we do once we start going over. So Steve, you're up.
Hopefully you did a quick one down. Yeah, sorry.
So the last meeting, we kind of went through in detail, the types of improvements that are at our disposal when we're looking at improving safety along the corridor and capacity. So we're not going to go through all that again tonight. I promised you we would, but I just wanted to do a brief refresher. So really, we look at road networks kind of at 3 different scales. One is at the network level. So how are cars getting from point A to point B? Really looking, are there alternate routes that we could improve or other things like that? One is really at the roadway level. So what's improvements along a given road? And the third is really dialing into just the intersection level. So within those scales, we also, every improvement we make is going to have different costs, both financial costs, time, right of way. And all of those costs also take different amounts of time. So time can count as that too. So looking at whether a project can get online in a short amount of time or it's going to take a really long time. I know some of you have been involved in transportation planning in the county for quite a while. And some of the projects that are coming online in the next year or so have been discussed for over a decade, or in some cases more than that even. So you're well aware of that. And also those impacts. So as we went through our toolbox last month, we kind of talked about how different improvement types have different costs. So again, at the network level, we could build an entirely new road, and that could really help alleviate a lot of congestion issues, but it's going to take a lot of time, be very expensive, and have a lot of impacts to private property owners. You all get the idea. So these are our network level improvements: new roadway, new interchange or grades separated,
intersection, similar to what is being constructed out on 1 and 16 right now. You could realign a roadway. Some of those projects we'll be hearing about a little bit later, where you can align, especially an intersection for improved flow. And just broadly improving interconnectivity. We talked about that last time as well, especially interconnectivity for people who are traveling maybe by bike or by foot, as well as by car. So at the roadway level, kind of one of the top things we look at is widening a road. So you can take a road that is currently 2 lanes and look at a 3 or 4 lane section. And that is really something we're going to be getting into this evening a little bit with 9. So as many of you are aware, the department is starting to widen 9, close to 1. So how far that widening needs to happen is something we really would like to talk with you all this evening. Are you guys good?
You need to turn your camera on.
Okay, I can do that. There we go. And also, frontage of service roads are another thing we can do right along a roadway. So we may have a main road and, you know, you have a lot of driveways and that really slows cars down and gives you a lot of start and stop. But if you can consolidate to 1 entrance and have a service road, that can help improve safety as well. So again, those are some of our roadway improvements. And lastly, at the intersection level, there's actually a lot of really quick and efficient ways we can improve safety and capacity. Things like adding a right-hand turn lane. So instead of someone slowing down in front of you to make a right, they can actually get out of the way and allow free flow traffic to move forward. Same with left turn lanes. And of course, things like always stops when necessary to allow cars to get across the roadway. Roundabouts, I'm sure we all have lots of opinions about those. Definitely a tool that improves safety. And also signalization. So these are kind of, when we look at a corridor, those are kind of our tools in our toolbox that we look at. And as we walk through Route 9 this evening, we can kind of keep all of those things in mind. So with that, Steve's going to talk a little bit about some of the traffic issues on 9 right now.
Give my standard update. I apologize. I'm just a little hoarse getting over a cold, but I'll do my best here to project. So looking at as we started on 16, we'll look at the AADT traffic. Starting with sort of the base estimates from the DelDOT volume summary, right around 15,000. Taking data, extra data, recent data from counts and from the StreetLight big data software. We've honed in a little bit those numbers, a little bit less on the Georgetown Harbison area. However, we have reason to think that those might have been impacted in 2021 by the ongoing construction at Sand Hill Road and Airport Road. So we're sort of willing to say that it's probably around 15,000 per day demand. So no real significant adjustments to the DelDOT volume summary there. One big difference here is that the seasonal factor is only about 5 or 10% extra traffic over that 15,000 in the summer. Whereas on 16, remember, it was up around 30% increase to the daily traffic in the summer. Couple quick checks of the origin destination data. Again, to sort of compare to 16, show how this corridor is a little different, make sure we all are on the same page with that. From leaving Georgetown on Route 9, we have tracked 5,400 cars in summer 2021. And you can see, it's a little bit hard to see maybe, but there's a lot of offshoots of that traffic. So people going on Sand Hill, on 30, on 5, on some of the other side streets. And by the time you get to 5 points, you're down to 2,100 cars or less than 40% of that traffic is through traffic. Again, compared to 16, where we were talking 60+%, was just staying on 16, heading across that section between 113 and 1. Similar looking westbound. We're not even starting all the way at 5 points, just looking at a point west of 5, which we track 7,200 cars in that direction. Entering Georgetown, we're down below 3,000. So that's again 40% number comes back. We dispersed enough traffic. 60% of the traffic is already dispersed by the time you get to Georgetown. Some other interesting things about these splits are the and it's not just from this graphic, sort of looking at it, other data we've looked at, it is a fairly even split, west of 113 to 404 and to US 9 as after they split in Georgetown. So there's kind of, yeah, 700 and 850, maybe a little bit more to US 9, but traffic does sort of split at the Georgetown Circle, and head north and continue west. And it's similar the other way. They come in and sort of merge in the circle, or at least in Georgetown. So just the general traffic patterns there. This is not a through corridor. There's people dusting for places along US 9 for the towns and side streets along US 9. So again, basic summary. We're talking 15,000 vehicles daily, which is more than we were talking last month on 16. Yeah, or 50% more. Thankfully, the increase in the summer is not as much as we saw in 16, but still something still notable, still is a little bit worse in the summer. And with growth and development, we're going to be looking at daily volumes approaching 20,000, which is again from the first meeting, sort of the common threshold we used as we might start to need to consider dualization. Based on a lot of other factors and analysis too, but that's sort of a threshold to keep in your mind. The other thing we're going to sort of go through as we sort of bury more of this analysis into the west to east sort of travel as we talk further, is that the signalized intersections are essentially built out here. You know, you go back, think back to 16 where you have 30 and Route 5 that have basically no turn lanes. They're two-phase signals. We'll show you aerials. Every signal along 16 has left turn lanes, has bike lanes, on all approaches. It's not just along US 9. Most of them have right turn lanes. So some of those toolbox items where we could consider what we're considering on 16, maybe improving some of those signals in different ways. We sort of, they're not an option here. They've already been done on US 9. So it's even the same story with many of the unsignalized intersections. Which is good news. You know, the developer, a lot of them are, you know, sort of newer developments in the last 10 years. Those entrances aren't just sort of plopped onto US 9 with no improvements. You know, you see even the development entrances have left turn lane in, right turn lane in, bike lanes, a lot of a bus stop, you know, pull off marked. So it's a kudos to sort of development coordination been done properly to sort of expand the road, make sure we're not creating safety problems or capacity problems at those new entrances. So we want to see that continue, obviously. Obviously, they're not perfect, so you know, not to say there's no spot locations out here that wouldn't benefit from some intersection improvements, but maybe thinking more big picture here along this thing. And to get into, we did some further analysis on these intersections that we didn't show you on 16. I'm not going to read all this. There's a couple of slides here. It's for your own reference, but it talks about level of service and how the DOT planning sort of uses that to figure out what needs to be done or sort of rank alternatives. So obviously we assign it a letter A through F. Most of you've probably seen that. Obviously you don't want to be F. F sort of is your overcapacity, delay is horrible. But what else did it say? There are other important traffic performance measures that we want to pay attention to as well, like delay, queuing, head bike level stress is new but big in the department these days. Closely related to capacity, like I said, it's volume over capacity over one is generally LOSF. We try to stay away from E, but it's not necessarily gonna tank a project if it's the worst case peak.
I think historically, when we bring level of service data to members of the general public, there's a phenomenon that happens where we all are like, ooh, I don't want to see on a paper, right? It's just a very intuitive reaction to levels C, D, and E.
And I apologize for not saying this. So if we can come up with a graphic.
Yeah.
FHWA has a really great graphic because it doesn't, when you hear F, like you automatically think it's failing grade. But when you see like the number of cars and what that volume looks like, it's not quite what you think. So let me see if I can retrieve that just so that'll help kind of inform where we want.
And on these slides, we bring
That to be.
delay, average delay second, which can help paint the picture a little bit clearer too, where you can say, okay, I can low service C, but I can wait half a minute on average of this signal. That's not gonna ruin my day. Versus something that's 60, 70, 80 seconds delay on average for every car. And then some more notes for your reference. So, starting our travel across the US 9 corridor, Georgetown area. One of the first things you notice about Georgetown is a lot of ongoing, completed, planned, CDP projects. So we'll give you a brief, rundown on what's been done, what's happening, what's coming, on and around Georgetown. First one is the 113 at 18404 grade separated intersection. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with this. This is nearing construction starting, sort of design plans, still technically design and planning, I guess, but those plans are nearing completion and we're targeting a 2024 construction start. It'll be a 2 to 3 year project. So that's a big one. Image of what the plan grade separation will look like with some it's like 18404 over US 113 with some couple loop ramps and trying to maintain access to all the businesses and shopping in those areas. Also a grade separation plan slightly farther out in the future at 113 at 9. Still in the earlier stage of design and planning. These are all safety, justifications. We see crashes of these for many years. They've been hazard elimination program sites. They've been a thorn in many departments side, teams side and LDOT. So and they've also been identified through the long-term 113 north-south study. So this is just a schematic of the current plan for the 113 and 9 grade separation. I'm gonna get all that sort of one standard loop and slip ramp, and then we're getting 9 under 113 looks like with a more diamond interchange on the south of this picture. I imagine not there on the bottom of this picture. Yeah, sorry. I know my voice is.
You get to stop now.
Okay, yeah. I'm really.
So obviously, the other piece of the picture we want to consider is incoming development. And last month, we had a really valuable inputs from you all on incoming development. So we're going to walk through some projects that we are aware of. Jocelyn, you may have some more current updates and we'd love to hear from you on those. So please, I'll read through the slide and then if you want to fill in any blanks, you're welcome to. So kind of to the northwest quadrant of the 113 and 9 intersection, there's an Isaac's Farm proposed development, which includes over 300 residential units and quite a bit of commercial space, over 170,000 square feet of commercial space. That came in back in 2018, and I don't know what the current status of that is. If you do know, are aware of anything.
It's still moving. They haven't officially submitted anything on the residential yet, but we know that it's coming.
Okay, so that's still a live project. So
Yes.
one thing for those of you who are less familiar with the development process, often developers come in early to speak with the state planning office. Dorothy's here from the state and to DelDOT to kind of get a sense for what is going to be permitted and not given the current zoning and regulations. So these things often come in, and especially with the ups and downs of the economy, may sit on the drawing boards for quite a few years before they become live. So you'll see some of the dates for these might be old, but that doesn't mean they're not coming. So we kind of are working with you all to track what's coming next. And also later you'll hear from Steve some traffic projections. So we know what's on the roads now, but what we want to be aware of is what's going to be on the roads in 2050. And what the department tries to do is understand all the development that's happening and factor that in to those models of growth. So another project is kind of to the southeast of that same intersection, the Oaks at Georgetown, and that is a much older project that came in initially in 2006. And again, over 500 residential units for that one. Do we know if that one is still alive?
The apartments have been built, townhomes, they're getting ready to start that phase next, and then they'll do the single family later. So I'm guessing they just submitted for the change in the site plan, so I'm thinking it'll be in the next probably year and a half before we start rolling.
So there's a very good example of how some of these, I mean, 2006, so it's been kicking around since then as the developer comes up with the capital and to get things moving. So those are all the major DelDOT investments and residential investments in that direct vicinity. Are any of you aware of anything else coming that we should be aware of, or other factors or issues you have currently moving through the corridor, especially those maybe who operate or trying to bus kids around and other things like that? So this is Andrew, if you want to.
Yeah, what just got approved out by,
Here,
1009, that's about the racetrack,
Right there.
the whole track.
That's Chip and Stephanie's is 106. It's multi-use, being like townhomes and residential.
So where's that again? I didn't hear.
Across from
It's more of the next one. It's
Yeah.
west.
Sports at the Beach, it's at Sports at the
We'll get
Beach.
to that.
Yeah.
On our way east here.
Well, let's talk about traffic problems you may experience or any ideas you have for improvements in the Georgetown, sort of downtown vicinity or along.
And I do believe the Isaacs Farm, commercial part, they're doing road work along there, correct?
yes.
Yeah, because that's not us. If you're traveling through down 113 in Georgetown, right before the Exxon station, that construction is not DelDOT's construction. So that would be the developer making the required improvements along their roadway. Yeah.
So again, what we're trying to do, much like we did last time, is identify where you all, based on how you navigate these roads, your experience with these roads. And we recognize this segment's a little different than the other segments we're going to be focused on, because there's a lot already planned, and you have the circle downtown, there's a lot down there. But is there any suggestions that you have? Small, medium, large? I mean, this is idea time.
I'll be shocked if no one says anything about the circle.
Right?
No one says anything about the circle.
Which is a circle.
I'm
Just so we're clear.
thinking about the circle and the family court and how directional wayfinding, people are going to be, obviously, there's gonna be a lot more parking coming into the city for town. And how that's gonna be key. A lot of people want, be a lot of first timers coming to the what's usual, so getting people through the circle and that, I mean, that's kind of a sign, but I that's what I'm thinking about, because that's coming. I don't think people know.
The new family court building, you mean?
Yeah.
Mhm. And they are building a parking garage, correct?
Yeah.
They are. And then what's happening with the old family court building? Has that been decided yet?
Rumor was the AG's room had been there. They said it was too small.
It's still gonna be state offices, but
Okay.
we don't know exactly. It's
Exact-
all
right.
going in there.
Okay. Yeah, so parking has always been something that I've heard, especially on the circle, right? So one of the things that's been batted around, I think, for decades is, should parking still be allowed on the circle, right? Those kind of things. So if those kind of things are something that you've thought of, like where parking infrastructure in downtown Georgetown maybe needs to be improved, or like ped facilities, or, those kind of challenges,
I'm just thinking, not even parking on the circle, I'm thinking going around the circle.
just to get to the,
Park to where, East Market is, I mean, if there's a way to divert, and there's, all that new parking. Can there be multiple ways to get there instead of going around the circles, it just backs up. When,
well, sure, because you just need to go to Pine. The problem with that is the middle school, when it dismisses, I'm hearing horror stories of kids not being able to cross the street. So there's so many challenges when you put, and things I've tried to explain in the past are that you can't push everything into one location. We need to be able to spread it out a little bit. So, but like you're saying, the circle's that one thing too, right? Should we be pushing everybody into that circle? Or should we come up with a way to divert the traffic around the circle to get to family court before you hit the circle? So that's a valid point.
well, even just for non-family, and that's gonna be a great parking go to,
Sure.
so that, to maybe turn. Getting.
Are they charging for that? Do you know?
Well, the thing I'm worried about is I think the parking garage is already gonna be full just from employees.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, so.
Well, not just employees, but I mean, like, it'll fill up by 7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
The Sussex County will be also for some of their employees there.
Instead of there's 2 back lots. Yeah, okay, wow.
Send us information on where the entrance and egress from the garage are.
That'd be very helpful. Thing. And then can you also let her know which, is it both lots for Sussex County that are getting moved to the court parking? Or are you guys still,
Some of this, open space.
okay, are you retaining the spaces though that are still behind the court county building or no? Not the immediate lot in front of the court, the justice of the peace, but the next,
Yes.
Okay. okay.
Is the Oaks, development, is there, access to, 113? There, it doesn't look like it from the image, but.
I would say probably if it's a protected corridor,
No, the off of air safety or South Lake.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
isolated.
wow,
It's not
okay.
open on- Yeah.
With Isaac's Farm, how far north of 9
Mm.
is that access to 113 there?
They're actually working on the entrance now,
So right where they're doing.
where the commercial is.
So anything else, thoughts on, during busier periods, are there ways to, are you pretty much stuck behind the car in front of you, or is there ways to kind of get around? I mean, we are limited there a little bit, but we're open to hearing suggestions for, intersection improvements or turn lanes or,
Bless you.
whatever else, you think makes sense. If not, we'll move on to the,
I'm gonna throw something out there because I travel it frequently. So heading south, before you get to the circle, there needs, again, if we had the room to do this, I would love to have a center turn lane because inevitably traffic is stacking before you even reach the circle. Because people are making left-hand turns or somebody's trying to come out and so somebody's turning right and letting them come out. I mean, like, it's taking a lot longer to progress down that road at 25 miles an hour.
anyone else?
Is that right? Okay, so yeah.
Anyone else concur with that?
Yeah.
That's every day, yeah, especially after parade.
Yeah, yeah, or first thing in the morning, yeah.
Is there a common bypass that you take or, people take like, because it's sort of a grid system, you're constrained more than maybe a normal city resistant railroad tracks and stuff. Is there, knowing especially that like north to east connection, is there a standard bypass that maybe has extra traffic? Or it's just sometimes you find your way around, sometimes you wait through this.
So you can come through the town of Georgetown. The problem is that you then end up at every stop sign.
Mhm.
That's the only thing, right? Like, is that, yeah, you can follow that grid, but then you're stopping at every stop sign. You just kind of go, it's like 6 of one, half dozen the other. Either way, you're limited time wise.
Yeah, believe me, I've been trying to find quicker.
Yeah, no.
Go ahead, Ajit.
Isn't the truck route 9 going to intersect with 113?
Mhm.
We'll share that in a moment.
Because that from coming west, that could take a lot of pressure off Georgia. I don't know that I would use it going east.
Right.
I don't know that I'd go south to go east, but it's possible.
If you're coming from Lewis heading to Millsboro, maybe, but it just depends, yeah, where logistically you want to be.
But anything else? I mean, we're not trying to, we knew when we brought this, we purposely led with this one, because we knew that this is a more difficult stretch to kind of come up with ideas. First of all, we have some big projects that are going on, but we also know that they're, with the circle and with
We're
lots.
talking about parking. And like when you get back off of Ray Street, you park on both sides of the street.
Mhm.
If I'm running a big yellow bus down there, nobody's getting,
Right,
because it's gonna take up the whole lane.
correct.
And I've talked to a couple different entities, if you can park on one side of the street, but then you're cut down on the parking even more. But in an effort to kind of keep traffic moving, it's just, we're making turns, we're making swings. We're parking near the corners, we're right at the hydrants, we're right at where we can be. And we're packing more and more, we have, more cars in there, because there is nowhere else to go. But those houses there are gonna be municipal. We're gonna have kids in there all year long.
Right.
Forever, 10, 15, 20 years, 50 years. That's still gonna be a residential area. Either side's of Bedford Street, it's gonna be residential. We tried not to go through the residential, as much as we can, but when we get back in Ray Street, when we have that parking on both sides of the road, especially there by the Boys and Girls Club, where I'm dropping 45, 50 kids off a pop or whatever school's coming in there. That's, we will slow down traffic, and we will clog it up.
And that's not unique to Georgetown. Just so you know, like I was just telling them that about Milford's challenges too. You have parking on both sides of the street in a municipal area. It's all you need is a trash truck, right? Or a school bus or a big freight truck that's trying to make a delivery, and all traffic is now stopped. So yeah, so that's a good.
All right, we're gonna move on, have Steve go through. We've got a comment that we're just, or two that Leah's gonna read from some of our virtual attendees.
We're kind of working our way through incrementally. We'll take public comment formally at the end, but just wanted to note some of the things that are coming up via the Q&A. One is a comment to complete the Georgetown to Lewis Trail, to have alternates for folks being able to get in and out of town. If you're trying to patronize a business, it might be quicker and easier to just use a bike. Also, affirmations about the courthouse, needing better motor vehicle access and local parking situations. Issues of double parking creating major backups and bottlenecks. So basically affirmations here that things are consistent. So thank you. That's all we have.
Okay, so you all have your 11 by 17 maps. We're gonna go to map 2 now. And Steve's gonna take us through this area.
Clear Hill, East Gateway area. Recently completed project, provided turn lanes on all approaches, channelized right turns on a couple of approaches, head facilities on all approaches, and even a double left turn on the eastbound approach, sort of to prepare for additional future traffic along that movement. The good news there is based on our current counts and our sort of simple projections, calling them simple because we still ran them through the complex model that looks at all the data available at the time, and sort of includes projections for development and growth and things like that. But we did just take the estimated 0.6% annual growth along US 9 and just sort of apply it to the intersection as a whole. So this doesn't take into account specific movements from specific developments, where like a TIS would really get into that. This is a more general roadway growth, but just to sort of put a number on 2050, get a ballpark order of magnitude idea in everyone's head about what the volume might look like, and what the resulting delay in capacity might look like in 2050. We sort of ran those through the simulation model. The good news here is it doesn't look like we're going to need to dualize. We're level service C now with the improvements, and in 2050 we're still expected to be the level service C with not much change to the delay. So no real reason we think to consider dualization this far into Georgetown area. Just a refresher on the project.
Steve, sorry, that's Steve going through the analysis. That doesn't mean when we start discussing it that you may not have a different view on that. So again, don't look for Steve or any one of us is offering something.
I will just say that intersection now is so much better.
Yeah.
We like to hear
Oh my God.
it.
Big difference.
I watched it on camera today, and I saw how bad it was in the construction.
What we do for fun, we watch intersection.
Being built.
I'm trying to solve that school. I'm trying to solve that school traffic when they got let out.
Intersection, it shows you what, not everything has to be dualization or bypasses or elevated highways or, massive, you do intersection improvements or different types of improvements that make a real big difference. So again, those are the kinds of things we're looking for from you, so.
Yeah, as nice as that intersection is, but you have homes that exit out into a turn lane. And when you look at how wide, how many lanes you've got, I'm putting a bus in a turn lane to load kids on, and they see 2 lanes, and they're getting in the fourth lane and they're blowing reds. I understand the need, but when you extend that turn lane as far out as you did into those residential homes, it has some issues that I have to deal with. You know, those bus drivers call me, which they run my rest. And they're paying out of luck. Because they see it change and they're in a hurry. And they're trying to get loose.
They go around your bus or?
If you say they're ready, you mean the stop sign off the side of the bus.
Because it's three lanes, because they're in they have to get all the way to the right, they're in the turn lane. Then you've got two travel lanes. You know, one's just gonna go to left sand or, you know, cheer center.
Or every one of those lanes should be stopped.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's more, it sounds like more of a.
Same
communication
direction.
Yeah,
slash enforcement.
I mean,
That's a good note, though. I mean, that's definitely people may need to be educated about that, or if not educated, enforced.
Well,
Forced to become educated.
Yeah.
well, Glenn and I were talking about that the last meeting was how the education about stopping, not just for school buses, but stop even moving for emergency vehicles has become, you know, I'm shocked at how little people are aware of that. I'm not sure what other states do or why we're so bad at it, but something definitely needs to give.
I encountered the same thing in Pennsylvania over the weekend. No one pulled over. I was on Route 30.
I think there is some legitimate uncertainty over the laws of, you know, 4-lane roads and school buses and divided highways and undivided highways. So,
that's what we're thinking about.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Okay, so that was a successful project. And then there's some development in that area.
Yeah, getting into area development, and I know we are outside of town limits, at this point, correct?
Just barely, but yes.
Right on the edge, so. One major project coming through that is partially constructed now, so you can see down close to the Sand Hill 9 intersection. Some of the senior community has been constructed, but there are plans to extend that development to the north up to 500 units. So that's just one more input to that intersection that's going to continue developing as far as we're aware. I don't see anyone from the county shaking their head to tell me otherwise.
No, that's definitely still moving.
Still moving, yep. Turns out we're all getting older and the places. Also, kind of across the street, across Sand Hill Road from that development, I guess we call it a recreational facility. RV campsites, cabins, and some commercial coming in at that location.
Is that still the same?
I went through as a conditional use.
Okay, I apologize. It had been a couple things, I thought, right?
It was a mixture, it wasn't just campsites.
Okay. Okay, thanks, yeah. Just clarifying.
If they're coming from the east, so from 132. How will do they have to come, you know, through like the truck route, or will they be able to come through?
Trucks?
Who's
Oh,
that?
RV.
Oh, RVs.
It's a great game to go where we.
So that's certainly something to
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah,
Right, and again, the reason they chose this location is because it's right across from Sports at the Beach, so they're gonna have all the families stacked up there during the events.
well, that points,
Oh, right,
They got room frontage at both.
they have
What'd you say,
what?
Brian?
They got room frontage at both, so at Sports at the Beach, you're gonna deal with Sports at the Beach and the campground. Same thing at the Sand Hill Shell Rollers Park. You got access into there and the campground right across from each other.
so to me, that points to, I bet it's gonna take folks longer to drive there than it would to walk or ride a bike across the road. So looking at some interconnectivity. Maybe for folks who would be able to, especially if you're with young active kids, move on foot instead of sitting in the car and being late to your game. Crossings in that vicinity. Good insight, which is tricky because we have residential development on the front end, right? So you don't have a clean solution to that, but maybe there's a way we could look at some creative solutions in that vicinity.
You're also in the 106 houses right there. Where that.
Yeah.
Track is,
But the horse track, that was the one you were mentioning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep,
that's 106, it's mixed use.
okay.
So that, planning and zoning approved that, but it's still gotta go through county council, I believe. Oh, it's already approved. That's the one with the rental units? No, the one to the south, the one in orange. I apologize with the track, right? Thank you. Yes, that's the one that's still gotta go through council. Okay.
And again, just, you know, I'm constantly trying to pull things out of you here, but, you know, as you're thinking about this, you know, our process that we're going through right now, as you look at developments, as you hear about, traffic, whatever it is that each of you kind of think of, and that's brought you here to kind of put your input, try not to just think about what life is going to be like next year or the year after. You know, this process is intended to get in front of things for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years. And we have to try to look out, you know, I'll put Scott on the hot seat for a second, you know, as a, you know, tourism for this area, you know, you're not just thinking about next year, but you're trying to, you know, look for things down the line. So, you know, try to keep those things in mind, because the planning we do now is really to put, we don't have to build it today, but we want to try to preserve right away, do things that, so when it's needed, we have the opportunity to do it.
So, and then, so there's Leeward Chase. I knew I had it hiding in here
Okay.
somewhere. It was just a little out of order. And then the last one we had is Greenleaf Place, which is to the east of Sports at the Beach. Another senior community. With maybe over 100 single-family units proposed currently. So
Yes.
there are homes
Is that right?
along that small street extending down there, but this is kind of filling in behind this.
Is that correct? Greenleaf Place has been through already too, or no? Yeah. It just came through Plus, so
The new one.
you've not seen it then probably? Okay, you're
Okay,
good.
so this one has been submitted to the state, but sounds like
Not
the
the
county's
county.
not heard about it yet, so this one's, we'll keep eyes on it as it goes through the process.
So this, I just want to throw out there, so just seeing all this development around Sports at the Beach and the Sand Hill complex. That's a whole nother draw, right? Like, this isn't the beach. Right? It's not the beach anymore. Huh? Yeah.
To the beach.
No, but I mean, like, this isn't gonna just be the travelers heading to the beach. This is now going to be here every day, especially during the summer, right? When all the soccer camps and field hockey camps and lacrosse camps are going on. Like, isn't that what these fields are hosting? I mean, so keep that in mind too. What does that look like? Yeah, the school buses are off the roads, but how many people are actually in Georgetown now? Georgetown looks very different than it did when I was working in the State Service Center in 2006 to 2011, right? Like, as soon as I left, I went to Delta, everything changed down here. So what can we do? What tools that we've given out or kind of suggested, would you imagine would help with those kind of things if the development keeps coming in and the people just keep coming?
Right, this is a good slide, just to illustrate that, like right now, we're looking at Sports at the Beach, zoomed in a little bit, I mean, they provided a bypass lane for the westbound, so you don't rear end the left turners, but that's really all that's there right now, I guess the right turn lane in, but we talked about the northern parcel developing and traffic and continuing to grow and need for maybe pedestrian amenities, so I think we sort of covered it, but it wouldn't shock any of us to have eventual signal or some sort of major improvement here to accommodate all that new traffic.
What do people think about a signal there? Is that seen as something positive, something negative, or?
And again, the Leeward Chase is going to be rental units. Let me just be very clear about that, because it wasn't clear if they were going to be Airbnb rental units, year-round rental units, seasonal rental units. I mean, so consider all those possibilities when you're thinking about those houses going in next to Sports at the Beach.
What's the likelihood that you could, through access permitting, just enforce access management, service roads and things of that nature? So the mainline traffic continues to move without.
So that would be one of the tools, right? Like I was explaining today, I had an interview with WRDE and just kind of like the Maryland area, as soon as you get over the Bay Bridge, those are the service roads, right? Like that you would, if you have the capacity and you have that space, we just, right now where we are, unfortunately, I don't think we have that space available. But what can we do if there's space?
Then you look at all the driveway densities that are there, somehow you're gonna
be able to collect those driveways, the traffic in those driveways and keep them off the main line, or at least be able to funnel into the main line that you choose as opposed to where they get on.
Right, and again, it doesn't mean that the surface roads have to be what we consider typical everyday service roads, right? Like, let's look at something different or outside the box that might work for something like sports at the beach.
Getting back to your Georgetown, with the sports complex aspect, with the two, with the camping. You know, it's really gonna blow up on weekends.
Sure.
And I mean, it is already, but I mean, even more so, we know that. So I think about the multimodal, you know, solutions that we keep talking about, everything from, the trailhead that's gonna connect with the Georgetown part of the trail, but also with the trails by Sand Hill Field, I think about, shuttle buses, with the town involved, just to get people back and forth, to eat, to do whatever, to, get out. It's talking about doing the same thing, the Delaware Turf right now. So it's the same concept, but just, I guess what I'm trying to say is it'd be helpful to keep people parked versus having to repark.
And as somebody who lives in Milford and deals with the Delaware Turf folks in Milford every weekend, I'm gonna tell you, you want something planned for that to happen, right? I mean, I love it. We love that Milford's booming and people come and service our businesses, but yeah, it does, when you live here and then it grows and grows and keeps growing and you're like, you can't get Chick-fil-A, or you can't get, you can't get in the grocery store. We just had Aldi's open and they're lined out around the block. Those kind of things are gonna come to Georgetown, right? Like, so, or they're already here, but it's gonna keep growing. But yeah,
Living, it's, and again, I'm going years out.
No, yeah.
Next year, but I mean, that's just, and that's a eastern side of the county, so now, but it's the same concept.
But Lewis is doing the shuttle and it's very successful. They're working with DTC again to try and do it this year to have even more effective route. And they had, I want to say it was 2,600 people use it last year. It was close to that. So it was a lot, it was high numbers for something that started a kind of short notice. And people were parking at, Rich, I think at the high school. They had a deal with the city to do that. So again, those are things that should be considered for sure, right? Because you do want to move even your most vulnerable populations around safely. The healthier populations, they're going to be on bikes and they're going to be, walking or biking or jogging. Which is why, multimodal studies and complete streets are so important.
What about emergency services? I'm just curious, as you think of that area around Sports at the Beach, it's growing. Obviously, there's a lot of potential kids, and you put a bunch of kids in an area, someone's going to do something for themselves, but just getting through that area. What are some things that maybe some of the emergency services people that we have here, or not emergency services, think we maybe need to do there to facilitate you all being able to get around if you need to?
So Ocean City, but they did at their meeting, and we won't know, right?
Right.
So we talked about this on the 5 points, the possibility of pedestrian. Challenge of that is right away, it's got to be ADA compatible for
Compliant,
and they're not cheap, but if you're doing that for just a couple of entities.
Couple of what?
Entities, so that are really going to utilize that, but the other challenge facing that is those individuals are the ones that are probably more likely to take the risk.
Correct.
Cross.
Correct.
They should be crossing, and there is no true safe way to do that.
Correct, because that would be a mid-block crossing, right? Like, so that's not something Delta entertains. We don't feel those are safe.
With that, what's an idea? So is your idea to at least consider, look at it, kind of understand what a pedestrian bridge might look like there? Again, I'm not saying
I think that's about the only option you have, because you're not gonna stop traffic at that point at 50 miles an hour with a crossing like this.
Oh,
That's not.
so would a full signal work though?
Full signal will be your second best option, I would say, but the first best option is be pedestrian, which otherwise, you're gonna.
So
have
you're
that
talking-
partner who says, I can make it.
You're talking a couple $1 million versus 15 to 20 million dollars. So.
Yeah.
Unless those private entities,
I can tell you right now, Pete Townsend is not gonna go.
so,
The county might on their part.
Well, again, we're not,
Right.
right now, we're not trying to solve all the eventual issues that might come. We're trying to decide whether there's an idea that's worth looking into. And then, everything faces some obstacles. Nothing is just a silver bullet, so.
and just an understanding that the developments that are coming in, they will be required to do traffic impact studies. Or traffic analysis, for this area. So understand that that might not be complete at this point.
We're going to a fire tonight in Georgetown. And I'm in charge of the equipment. We're going down Shingle Point. So we can stay away from that traffic circle. And then straight down Levon. That's just our best route of travel. Because 319 to 30 slows you down. So does the traffic circle, something terrible.
So, I mean, when I hear that, I say that's great. I'm sure the people who live on those streets are probably wishing that the heavy machinery would stay on bigger roads, right? But I mean, these are the trade-offs. I mean, you have to get where you're going. That's not the issue, but how is there something we could do on 9? And again, not everything, we don't have to look at this from what's easy. It can be difficult.
right, yeah.
It can be hard. But is there something that we could look at for that stretch of roadway along 9 that would make it easier if there was a true emergency that you had to get to, then you could be able to utilize 9 to get there.
What about the farm equipment? Is the farm equipment coming down 9? During certain times of the year?
Like a car near around.
Okay,
We don't travel out.
okay. You try to stay on, okay. I didn't know, because I mean, again, when we get to the midsection of 9, it is still pretty rural.
Okay. Push as hard as I can push.
The campground has access to.
Yeah. Go back up.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Pete Townsend is across from the campground. I mean, I just think there's a problem with the kids in both places, right? There's a problem with the big rigs getting around. There's, if there was any way to kind of grid that system out so that if you are playing soccer and baseball, you don't have to get on the Route 9. You only have to cross it to get to Pete's and to get to the shelter. And if there was, I just see a lot of development of a very dense place. If there's ever a place for service, before all that.
To the east, you got that new development that's already done, the west of Willows. That's 287. And then to the north of that, you got 690, which is right out here. It's already approved. So all that woods is kind of already predestined. They run through there.
And that is a challenge to, we can discuss it, but the longer we discuss it, the less opportunity, property is going away.
Because it's on paper, right? There's no,
Which one?
the one across Route 9 that's in the woods, that's,
That-
they haven't.
Yeah, they broke ground on that already.
Well, I think let's move on to the next one. We're gonna come back, and again, the way this process is gonna work is based on what we're hearing from you all, as well as some of our own professional judgment, professional recommendations. We're gonna come back to you, not just with 16, but now with 9, and with some things that we think this group should consider. So as well as the public when we go back out to the public. So why don't we keep going?
Moving a little farther east, the Park Avenue area. So right now, this is not improved, but no turn lanes, anything like that, but scheduled for 2025. We will have improvements that provide all those amenities to this location. As part of the Park Avenue relocation phase 2. So ongoing right now, Park Avenue relocation phase 1, coming shortly, phase 2. This is a pretty major project. That goes all the way from 113, realigns, off alignment section, new road. To align Park Avenue across from Air Safety Road. Yeah. And then comes up, improvements along. Park Avenue, which is also truck Route 9, as was mentioned earlier, all the way up to US 9. And also includes improvements at Shingle Point Road and US 9. So. This, I think, IG, you mentioned truck traffic. I think this becomes a lot easier for trucks, because right now trucks had to. On Park Ave, they had to come all the way up, or almost into a residential area, come down all the way. I think the sign all the way to Bedford Street.
Yeah.
It wasn't signed to Air Safety, so that was some extra turns and. Extra distance that this will shave off, so hopefully that becomes a more attractive truck route. Easier, quicker, less stops.
So back to that intersection or the light there.
Which one?
No, you're gonna go right back, right there.
Okay.
So I know you said 2025, but there's certainly be some shoulder improvement westbound. Because you have vehicles that go through there on a regular basis when they're when they're waiting for somebody to the left turn. That is, and I've seen it.
Yeah, I know.
It's a default lane, yeah.
Yeah, it is the default lane. you can
And that's
see,
on 9?
But
Yeah,
yeah,
westbound.
it's a default lane that is unsafe.
Right,
Can't say how many
yeah,
hours.
I know we just.
That's right where your offices are, yeah.
Trying to alleviate that.
We
Just
see-
we had a return phase, to try to clear out some of those lefts that people had to wait behind, but yeah, I think until we can provide an actual lane, left turn lane, people are gonna do that.
But the left turn signal doesn't help.
It does.
Does not help.
Okay. It does, because it does.
It does. I mean, it's
That's good.
something. Oh,
Right.
yeah, that.
I think that's the stepwise approach that they're trying to take, like, obviously, we're not just like, we're not gonna get to that full construction widening, turn lanes everywhere, new signal. Yet, but we knew something had to be done, so we did what we could, and hopefully in a couple of years.
Since we're talking about the intersection, I know there's a lot that's gonna happen. But with Delaware Coastal Business Park and Delaware Coastal Airport, people aren't familiar with the difference between the two. I know there's like a sketch of an airplane there, but with the signs, a lot of people think they're going to the airport making a left there. I think with the new arrangement, I can't stress that enough, how Delaware Coastal Airport and Business Park have to be really spare.
That's a good news.
Yeah.
Better wayfinding.
Yes,
Yeah, and just because that's just not gonna, people have problems with GPS and stuff all the time. They end up taking a left,
So
thinking going to the airport.
yeah, it drops. The GPS doesn't pick up well
So,
there.
so in those key points, I mean, I think it's because that's why they're not, they can just keep going straight to the airport.
Yeah.
But and you do have that, there's like that airplane there, but it needs to be like part of. It might already be built in, but I don't want to assume that with the improvements, but it needs to really spell out.
I haven't seen what the airport improvements look like. Can you get us?
Or
Get me something.
the intersection.
Oh, at the intersection,
Yeah,
you
with
mean?
the Park Avenue, just
For the-
signage.
Gotcha, for the business park versus the,
Correct.
yeah, okay,
I think this.
better signing.
Prior meeting, somebody asked about this triangular intersection. So this sort of shows the plan for the Woodbury, Cedar Lane, Park Avenue, triangle, they're gonna. Sort of cul-de-sac off one of them, realign one to it, so it's not skewed anymore. Won't be signalized, but. Again, you can see we're providing bike lane, left turn lane. There, so that should be an improvement there. And then this is sort of the big picture at Park Avenue and Sand Hill Road. Providing turn lanes again, try to prevent those people bypassing the shoulder, which is always. Who's gonna do it, who's not gonna do it, who's gonna decide to do it in the middle of the queue and hit somebody in the shoulder. Shingle point, sorry. And then just a close up on Shingle Point. Similar improvements to Park Ave, still not signalizing this one yet. Traffic demand is not quite what we see at Park Ave. But still some significant improvements to that intersection as well. And just sort of as, I have a couple of these unsignalized ones as we go by showing that. They sort of, developers did the right thing here. It's a big development. They provided the improvements along US 9 that needed to be done. So. Thumbs up to them. Any other discussion, thoughts, improvements for Park Avenue? Area?
Glad to hear that some of the incremental tweaks are helping. So that is something that I know, the traffic folks are kind of, it matters if you notice, like, one day you come into work and things are akimbo, you can get in touch and there can be real-time adjustments. To that stuff. So thank you for those of you who are here. Get in touch.
We don't always get the positive feedback. We get the negative feedback.
Any other suggestions? And obviously, there's already some investment that's going on there, and I think what that investment allows is, when a signal is needed, I mean, you've kind of got the infrastructure in there, but certainly looking for anything else, any type bike ped suggestions, any other safety or intersection type suggestions?
For the trail.
I didn't look at the schools.
There you go. Shh. Wait, hold on. But the trail, I was just looking up the map because I knew that the trail had come in. And it only gets right now to Airport Road, but right, so it's gonna run along the rail. Coming out of Georgetown and then finally do that last connection. Is there anything else? Should we be looking at other crossings? Should we be looking at? Making sure if something comes in along this corridor, that they're putting in multi-use paths, that they're putting in, all of those kind of complete street things, or can I throw out what we used to talk about? I mean, we've talked about the potential of, so I don't know how many people are aware of what our corridor capacity preservation program is, but Route 1, Route 13, Route 113 are all protected corridors, and we're looking at turning them into what they were intended to be, which is a high-speed highway. And then that would include putting in some locations some service roads, right, where you would be able to then access development, shopping centers, and whatever decides to come in along those corridors more easily by not stopping traffic on the main highway. That program was adopted by the General Assembly. DelDOT oversees it, but the land use agencies are able to submit to DelDOT the request for another corridor. Would 9 be one of those corridors?
Sounds to me like this traffic, 9 is. It's the old Route 1.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's the old 13, right? I grew up in Dover, so it's
But it's
right.
Single lane.
It's definitely right. It's something that, in my mind, like is going to end up like Dover if we don't. If it's not, it's going to end up with signals at every intersection, right? Because there's no other means to get people around other than roundabouts, which might be, some of them might meet that level. So is that a bigger discussion that you all would like to see kind of DelDOT and the land use agency have? I mean, is that something that we should be partnering with county to have that discussion about?
If you're just looking at sheer number of development, you're at the 20,000 plus. Proposed developments. Daily number of trips. It would be insane now to think that that's not gonna be here the next 10 years. Realistically, because you said we haven't got the pool spring yet.
It's coming. Hold on, it's coming. Shh.
Yeah,
That's
And
what I'm saying, game changer right there.
That-
So,
What? Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. So yeah.
so when, ask us again when you get there.
Yeah. Okay.
Say, sure, yes.
Okay.
Require 4 lanes. Is that what I heard?
That's what we're sort of implying, but it's like, not that cut and dry, obviously, it's not black and white.
And if there are 4 lanes is different than a limited access highway.
It is.
So it would be a designation that this group could ask to have that possibly looked at as a limited access highway.
So there's a difference between a limited access highway and a preserved corridor. Like it's a little different. I mean,
4 lane would not, like if this group said, we'd like you to look at 4 lanes, at least in certain areas, if not the entire corridor. But I don't think, again, I'm the one who said, hey, there's no bad idea, but Route 9 is not going to become a limited access They were literally just go from
No,
Lewis
right.
Georgetown with no way to get off the other side.
Yeah, but the reverse is that you don't want to come to a stop at every mile.
Right, so when I say the potential for the county and ZelDOT to talk about it being a protected corridor, to me, that means looking at ways, which we're trying to tell you to for the toolkit, right? To say, let's do service roads here. Let's not, let's make sure the developments are going to other roads. That's not required right now on Route 9.
Is there?
That's not a requirement, right?
Is there an additional way, an additional east-west route that could be looked at so that, you know? Pam, why don't do you mind, just so people at home can hear you?
Everyone, so just specifically with development coordination, since that I manage that section as well. We do take every effort to explain to the developers that the first choice is to take their entrance off of the lower volume freeway. So if they are at an intersection where they do abut, not Route 9, then we would very much push and recommend them to take that access off of the lower volume roadway. There are just some, just looking here that there's not a ton of cross roads to be able to access. So if the only option is to get off, is to make it from Route 9, that they have to get that access. So just a FYI, that is what we try to do. It's to help the distribution of traffic.
Ultimately, you have to provide access, but if you can provide it to the
Yes.
lower volume road, that's your preference.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's when you look at a parcel that has something like this coming off of it, that is part of that's resulting from that negotiation. That's a fair way to qualify that.
Yes, and they do, a fair amount of times a lot of the parcel gets to drift off like that. So they have if that was a whole parcel, we'll split the parcel and do commercial in the front, and then they'll do more residential stuff in the back. We do make them, put as much multi-vehicle, along
Yeah.
the front and stuff for their parcels as possible. So we do try to make them adhere to their fair share as much as we can.
So,
Glenn had a question.
I'm just curious. Has anybody been documenting or looking at the numbers, trending, development, movement here, post-pandemic as to pre-pandemic? A lot of the brick and mortar, a lot of people are now no longer going to be here seasonally, they're here full time. We've already seen that. We've already seen those numbers. Curious if that's one of those things that's being monitored.
It's hard to monitor. So I think we're all hearing it anecdotally. As planners, we often look to the census and the ACS they release every yearly data and every 5-year data. That is not fine-grained enough to get at that phenomena often. So we're really relying on traffic development applications, but the whole, live here full-time or part-time, some people change from, week to week with that, maybe they're planning to, or then they decide to lease it. And so it's very hard to keep an eye on, but I think as you all who are working in this sector begin to hear about more of that, or get a sense for the ratio of homes that are, we thought these were gonna be summer homes, and now it looks like folks are here year round. That's valuable for us to know that.
And we're having that conversation with FHWA right now, right? I'm pushing back because, after they took the census during the pandemic when no one was allowed to even be in the state that's from out of state. And then in 2021 is when we really started to see the uptick of people saying, oh, I can work from home. I'm going to go work at the beach. So we're trying to say, hey, you totally missed the whole boat on that, like, they're all here now.
One way we can track it is Streetlight, the kind of big data traffic management software. We can pull data from last month. It's not, or pretty, not quite that.
Not quite that
Not quite that
recent,
big, but relatively recently. So one thing we can do is start keeping an eye on that, because that is essentially relatively recent live data, and we can see month over month, year over year changes. So
I think year over year changes just haven't been enough data yet to really, like, we can tell it's bouncing back from the pandemic, and we can compare 21 or 22 to 2019, but there's so many factors right now. It'd be nice to have like another year or two of data. So
Because I want to move us to our next section. What map number is this going to be?
they're not directly
They're
correlated.
not. All right.
one that includes Route 30.
This is, yeah, look for Route 30. We're moving on to the Route 30 intersection.
It's another overview of 30 intersection. Already been provided with left and right turns, bike lanes, etc. Did the sinker analysis for this one too. And I think some of what we talked about last month, where summer Saturday sees some cut through traffic on Route 30. Some significant increase on Route 30. Sort of brings the delay on summer Saturdays a little bit higher. You can see if you really look into the volumes, that summer peak on 30 through traffic is pretty high. So growing the volumes to 2050, still AM and PM, we're looking at C's that we're getting really close to a D for over 30 seconds, but then the Saturday, again, we're at a pretty high D. We're talking 40, 45, 46 seconds delay for some average delay that ever shows up with that signal. Because that's caused by the 30 traffic, dualization may not save us as much time during all these peaks. So this is just sort of, again, to give you some perspective on what dualization would buy us, if it's something we should consider here, or just maybe other improvements here, like finding ways to accommodate traffic on 30 or keep traffic away from 30 to prevent sort of some of these higher delays, even though they're not in that sort of EF really concerning level. And the developments.
Yeah, so another relatively large development coming in the northwest quadrant, the Wilson Moore Azalea Woods development. That's over 500 units. Right, more 600. Okay,
Oh,
higher
yeah.
than what we have coming in.
It's like
plus
690.
690. So that sounds like it's still live. Do you know where they're at in the process?
This piece right here, the entrance on Route 30 is cut in, the retention ponds are put in, the pipes are in right now. And they'll probably start popping a house up every other day in 6 weeks or so. Aside from what looks like their road highway system in there, not much progress yet. It won't take long.
And they are phased, so they have certain amount of permits at certain phases for their development. Anything that's real big, you can add.
That'll be phased
Yeah, so-
improvements coming in.
Yep, phase improvements, and then this development, if I remember correctly, they're doing improvements along SR 30 as well as, is that Shingle Point that's on the other side of it? And then their entrance on 9, I believe might be just a right in, right out, but this was a development that even though it's large, has multiple entrances and exits, which is something that for the emergency response teams is a great thing, right? Like, because that way they're not trying to get to one location. There's different ways to add, they'll be able to access this neighborhood, so.
Also, right at that intersection, a much,
But I'm sorry, can you figure out?
I don't know why that setup changed. That's different from that.
Hold on. See if I can move my mouse over there.
The icon in the upper right, maybe, where it says view.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why it's switched. Try the side by side.
This one?
A little bit better.
Yeah, and then you take off that. Yeah, right, thing.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're welcome to speak. Chair. 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 Anyway, so yes, Wilson Moore Azalea, Woods, and also a smaller parcel, but it's a multifamily, development.
Got shut down.
Got shot down.
For now. I mean, they're gonna sue the county and the county, so yes, so.
Okay. Yeah, I did catch that the request to rezone was denied, so.
Yeah, they're gonna have a hard time justifying saying no when they say yes, the same thing down the street.
Wait, what is it? The what? Land?
Silver Oak Villas.
You're past it.
Oh, I went way past it.
So we'll keep an eye on that one. Obviously, you can have just as much traffic impact from a high density development as a single family home, depending on how many units you're fitting in. A little to the east of that, really creative name, Landlocked Acres. Made me laugh when I read it. 213 units. Anyone have any? That's an old one. That's all the way.
It's already overstocked.
That's most
Is
of
it?
that.
That's the whole one.
Yeah, you can see it under construction there in the aerial.
I think they're getting ready to come through the pretty good room. With that one.
Okay.
For last phase.
So that's, we'll start seeing that impact now. I'm sure some of them already have folks on.
What's that?
Some of them probably already.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There.
That was phased as well, I believe. Yep.
And then north of that, Hawthorne. Extension, I'm not sure what the
Yeah,
EXT stands for.
That's the pretty room.
That's the Pretty Road one. Okay, so that's the other side of that. So 100 units.
So
there.
that one's okay. There is a strategic issue with those two developments.
Yes,
So
please.
Hawthorne is built, all land they've been working on, but essentially built working on phases 1 through 6, that was done. Plymouth Road has come through. I understand that that one has recently gone through subdivision process of the county, and it's not built, but these two developments are to be interconnected. I understand there's a lot of concern in Hawthorne about the interconnectivity, to the point where we could see requests to remove the interconnectivity in the future.
Is it a requirement from Delta
It-
or from planning and zoning?
That's something that this group might want to think about is where you have developments that are along the corridor. Easy to connect with design strategically, and this is a perfect example of where this might come up in future months.
So I want to point to the emergency response folks in the room and say, and to the school districts and say, how does interconnectivity between developments help you?
It's great, but you gotta know the lowest common denominator, and somebody's gonna screw up with their strategic plan and not know where they're going. But I mean, it's nice to have an easy way in. So like, if we were going there, I would come down Route 5 right here, pick up. Petty John, West on Pretty in the back one.
So I guess basically what I want to ask is during say it's a summer Saturday, it's 12 o'clock and somebody has an emergency situation and you have to get there.
Yeah, we're not going down, I promise you.
And if those two developments are connected, easier or harder for you to get to somebody?
It's easier, it might be easier to cut through the development to get to somebody on Route 9, as well. I'm gonna say, but.
Depends. Okay, right. No, agreed.
Side development. Speed bump.
Oh, right.
Or how it's cut up, right? So there is no cookie cutter answer.
Okay.
right? So we've gotten that before, that we thought that the interconnections were,
But now they're adding, because they don't want people speeding, they're adding things that are now,
it's a jigsaw to get to point A.
right, because it's not gridded. They've got cul-de-sacs here, cul-de-sacs here, cul-de-sacs here. Okay.
Yes.
Multiple vehicle interconnectivity may be a challenge, I mean, what about pedestrian interconnectivity at bare minimum? Just as somebody can get between the intersections and get out to Route 9 to get to a bus stop where, otherwise they may not even have an ability, because there's no sidewalk connectivity to Narberth.
So Dorothy Morris from the Office of State Planning is with us, and that's why I'm letting you know who she is, because I'm getting ready to ask her, where are these developments? Which level are these developments in?
Oh, I could not tell you.
I-
I don't remember. I really don't.
Okay.
So I believe that.
Oh, it says it right on there.
Does it? Yep, level 4.
So,
it's level 4.
For
And
those,
Silver Oaks is level
yeah, so level 4 means the state is not paying for any infrastructure improvements at all.
Then we don't run them. But it's simple, because I can't guarantee that that road's gonna be maintained.
That's correct.
you know, snow, whatever.
No, right, we're not removing snow. We have a snow removal program that they can sign up for.
Well, and level 4, the state investment is for agriculture, it's for preservation, and it's for health, safety, and welfare. So I don't want to put out there that we wouldn't fix something that was wrong with the road, but we would not, but our first priority is for agriculture and preservation in the level 4 area.
So we have, I don't even know what the number is at this point that we just saw. But it's over almost 2,000 units of residential in an area where the state's not investing in anything but agriculture.
Based upon the interconnectivity. I almost think that has to come from either the developer or from developers. Because it's a sticky wicket when you're talking about neighbors. Nobody wants.
So tell me, okay, wait, but hold on. So tell me what the difference is between this $500,000 or more house and this $500,000 or more house.
Guys, I want to stop us for a second, because, you know, this is, we're turning this into a little too much of
No,
a
no.
development meeting. We have to make certain
Sorry, yeah.
assumptions, and I think what our slides are meant to do, is try to go through quickly, is to say, you know, there's the perception of development, there's the reality of development. We're trying to show you what the reality is, and what do we do about it? You know, what should we do from a transportation standpoint? Yes, we can talk about, you know, land use and ideas, policies, whatever, but we're really trying to come up with, you know, using our toolbox, what some ideas are as a result of both the beach traffic that Steve talked about, but there is some people using the corridor to kind of get through, but a lot of the traffic that's just generated from the different uses that people have on Route 9 and the new development that's coming.
And I didn't mean to get stuck on that, and I apologize. So being from Dover, the races back when I was growing up, West Dover was where all the locals headed, right? Like you all don't have that option. What's your West Dover is basically what I'm trying to say, right? It's not about the land use, it's about what can get you around on a summer Saturday. What's going to be safest for everybody?
So
Because
that gets back to that interconnectivity piece, but if you're driving, obviously, if you can. Either you drive out and all the way around and on to 9 and back, if you're going out to dinner at a neighbor's or someone in the next development over. Or you can do a short shot through or even walk to it, right? So I think we heard some concerns around us and emergency response with the interconnectivity and the internet, but I think there are some other benefits to that interconnectivity from a traffic reduction perspective. Jared mentioned walking and biking too, whether to access transit or just so your kid can go visit the kid they go to school with without you having to take a 20-minute drive. So I see some nods. I know Jamie, you explicitly called for perhaps I don't want to say a consensus. This group does not have any power, but we do not have any real power, but we can provide feedback if there's consensus around that principle, I think, to the county. And Jamie, you can let us know what form that could be provided in. Obviously, our next meeting will be kind of pulling together everything we've heard and working to come to that consensus around some high level recommendations. Again, we're not fixing the problems, we're giving us clearance to take the next step towards fixing a problem, right? So we're big picture stuff. But
And
Pam.
frankly, I'd love to be able to from somebody that's not from here, when I look at those amounts of delay, those don't seem like a lot coming from being up north. So we want to hear from you guys, are those numbers, do they jive with how you drive these roads every day? So that 30-second or, even in the full build out, are you thinking that the issues not so much congestion, but other things like multimodal and, and developments and all that kind of stuff? Is it the traffic congestion or is it other things? Because when I look at those numbers, I'm like, oh, everything's fine.
well, can we show the LOS
Yeah, we'll get to
pictures?
some that aren't quite as fine, but I guess some of the people that said they just avoid 9, they just don't go on 9, why is that? Is it
You can.
certain signals? Is it?
It's because it's low bandwidth is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you get stuck behind people driving 30 miles an hour.
That single lane road aspect.
Right, so I mean, I think that's just kind of a general consensus, regardless of development, I think it's just, it's a bandwidth issue, and I'm not saying that you have to dualize it now, but you have to have more. I think that Park Avenue is a great example, you have to have a little bit more wiggle room where you can, do it in the interim.
Okay, thank you.
If you're looking for like sheer number type stuff, for example, if I get on Route 9 at 7:10 a.m. The fastest that I will travel is 45 miles an hour
Heading in which direction?
headed east. If I get on at 6 o'clock, you can go to speed limit
Right.
or greater.
Correct.
And anything after 7:10, you're gonna be late to work.
But do you know why?
Volume. And
Right, but
people
do you know
not
why
driving
there's,
speed.
do you know why there's that high volume?
Everybody goes to work at 8, would be my assumption.
Right, and so,
And schools and, I mean.
right, so you've got schools, but again, so what our experience has been is that people who work on the eastern side of the county are living in
Yeah.
a less expensive area, so they're living in Georgetown or Bridgeville or Greenwood, just so they can afford to live there and then driving. And that's what's kind of driving up, for lack of a better term, the volumes during rush hour. So, right, isn't that, I'm pretty sure that's what we saw.
But there's
I think the
also
other
no point on 9. You're not stuck, right?
Right.
There is no,
Yeah.
like.
That's what it sounds like.
Right.
It's not intersection, intersection.
Right.
intersection.
There's
It's
no-
You're pulling car in front of you, you're pulling car in front of you. and
This is not- Oh, wow, okay.
I think it's a safety one too, because you don't want to freak people out, it's very dangerous.
Sure.
Well, let's move on to the next section. This is just another unsignalized that has some improvements. So this is probably the critical signalized intersection we wanted to get into, 9 and 5. As you can see, we did do a recent project here. We provided the left turn lanes, but we were unable to provide the right turn lanes due to space constraints. Specifically, there's a cemetery on the southwest corner, and there's a bridge, river stream of some sort that's constraining the west side. So some physical constraints there.
Yeah, you can't really see it as a bridge, you probably don't experience it as a bridge, but there is a structure there that you're driving on.
So here's finally some values that do sort of jump off the page at you. Right now, well, PM is sort of the critical peak, more so than AM and even Saturday. I know we've done queuing observations and gotten complaints from nearby businesses and stuff in our traffic sort of monitoring world. But growing the volume in 2050, we expect to see almost 80 seconds of average delay through this intersection, which is not great. Dualization here would provide pretty significant benefits. Getting an extra capacity, extra lane through here, but I think this is one of the biggest, physical constraints to deal with on the whole corridor. So that would be a pretty in-depth study and discussion, figuring how to make that work if that was something we wanted to look into. So maybe there's other ideas or other things that could be done or that you want to discuss as we go through this. Let's talk about the development first.
Yeah, so again, phase 3 of Beaver Creek built out. Obviously, that's been a big change in that area recently. I just wanted to highlight that. So really, anything else in that area, I know
You have a commercial property.
commercial to the southeast, right?
Pretty near Route 9 here.
Okay. What's the use of that?
It'll be commercial, it's not even, it's
Okay.
just, the sign just went up like a couple weeks.
Just because you all know, some commercial generates a lot more to and from travel than others, so we'll keep an eye on what use specifically is gonna manifest there. I mean, Harbison was mentioned earlier as kind of.
Oh, yeah,
It's growing and it's bad.
if I have to get gas in the random and go one time, God forbid, it's just a number, and sit through the traffic light there at 5 p.m. on a weekday, at least 2 or 3 traffic stops.
Doesn't matter which way.
Doesn't matter which way.
Still a lot better than what it was before. You just don't want to go backwards in a few
Like-
years and have it be like that again, where it's just like.
I think it's just getting
Yes.
worse.
From a safety standpoint, I'll say a lot better.
Yeah.
Are the trucks happy with that?
So the trucks are happier with the new intersection. All right, so good feedback. But again, I think you all understand the physical limitations here with the cemetery.
So with the physical limitations, one of the things that came to my mind was, is this an area where we need to be looking at a bypass?
Pretty much locked out.
So this is, what I say,
When it's getting built up, it's pretty hard to find 200 feet.
yeah, when you continue to kick the can down the road looking for that magic number.
Well, but that magic, that magic number might
you
not
no
be,
longer Have the ability to create that.
there's a neighborhood coming in that could potentially build it. Or has talked about realigning a couple of roads that might actually work.
That area.
At 9 and 5,
Isn't that where it is?
there's no development over there. Shouldn't be.
Where's Cool Spring? Am I too
Springs.
too far west? Too far west. I'm sorry, never mind. Disregard that.
Yeah, so we are approaching
Yeah.
8 o'clock and we like to be prompt with our time. So we're gonna keep on trucking to
We have
the
20
east,
minutes.
because I think Cool
Yeah,
Spring
let's
and
go.
that development incoming is arguably
Yeah, sorry.
worth discussing.
Uh,
But before there, Hudson River.
Fisher. Again, same thing, improved once already, looks like there's ongoing, at least the area taken, they're doing some pet improvements here, and probably associated with the trail. CTP project, but yeah, this is the trail project, they're extending the trail, design limit away.
They are still seeking funding on that, so that is unfunded at the moment, but the department's very committed to the Georgetown Lewis Trail and is actively pursuing grant funding at the moment.
We are at the end of the month.
Lots of those going.
Yay.
Right. So obviously, we all, I think, are aware of the large amount of development coming in this general vicinity. So there's the Wilkinson Road property, which is a 105 unit subdivision. Also, the Fisher Road property, 264 unit subdivision. And then the big one, Cool Springs. So in addition to the residential and mixed use development and commercial, I think you all can see the just vast size of that one.
That's 2,000 units.
2,000 units.
Commercial,
Plus or minus.
a good representation in Village of Five.
Yeah.
It's the same exact concept.
So. In addition to the Fisher Road intersection, 2 unsignalized intersections to the west.
Yeah, we just want to call those out as, these are one of the only 2 sort of medium-sized cross streets that don't actually have those improvements that we see a lot of other places with the turn lanes and you know, even bypass lanes, anything like that. So these are maybe one of the ones that has potential for spot improvements in the future. There's
Including traffic safety.
I don't know about the demand, we don't even count the size right here, so this would probably first go to like add left and right turn lanes. I would have to look at the volumes. I mean, does anyone know? I mean, what's your experience at these locations? Are they problematic?
What's comes.
It's
No.
not bad right now, but when you add
Yeah.
2,000.
Yeah, right,
houses,
right.
it's-
Well, and that would come through the GIS. They generate the trips in their huge development and route them. And if they had a significant number, the analysis would show that these now fail, you know? Right. They need some improvement.
the area for the bike
trails coming there
They're little parking lots. 1-person parking lot. for the
Well,
bike trail.
And my ask was, don't put Chick-fil-A on Route 9. That was my ask. So yeah,
Right, so moving on, this is the next signal, Speak Briar Dairy Farm. And a lot of improvements to this intersection over the last 5 to 8 years. Realigned Log Cabin Hill Road up to the north and made the sort of capacity improvements that we've seen common to the other signals along this corridor. Providing the numbers here as sort of the point between the Route 5 and the Lewis area to the east that is already sort of being started, are already being widened 4 lanes. As a sort of discussion point here as to what widening might look like here, how much delay that saves us. Here it looks like actually the AM is the controlling peak. And we do get up over 45 seconds in 2050, which again, still is not, like Pam said, Newcastle levels of scary, but it still could be frustrating drive, especially combined with all the other 45-second delays you might experience and all the cars you're stuck behind. So the question here is, we explore dualization, up to 35, is that sort of the next step after the next step? I think there's already, Jen, you said there's like a step from where it ends, the project ends now through a point. But then are we talking about sort of a phase 3 widening?
Yeah, so you can see there under the photo, the aerial, currently in the current CPP, DelDOT is planning to dualize 9 through Old Winery. So that's to the east yet, that's through kind of Nassau, the new Nassau Commons area. But there have been conversations that are very preliminary, and this is something we appreciate all your feedback on is, does that need to continue extending down to this point, or for even further west, right? I think that's part of what we want to, solicit your feedback on here. As Steve said, these numbers show some improvement between the 2050 no build and dualization. But they're not devastating numbers. But 5 was a little worse even than here.
Right.
So
5 is critical. If you're gonna fix 5, you look at this one as well.
So if we do another widening segment, like, so we're currently, Jamie's got a call for projects open. I'm getting a letter out to municipalities asking for planning studies. Like, we're developing our traffic sections, developing projects, our project development teams are developing projects to submit to the FY 25 30 CTP. Do we keep going with the widening? And if so, how far west are we going?
Your only place to continue building is to the west, so if you're looking at strategic planning. You may as well continue to strategically plan to widen the road, because if you're gonna say it's good enough to go for the east, the only place left to build is the west. So if you're thinking about the future, that's the reality.
And if you're gonna look at the logistical challenges that employers face in your tourist region, you need to have viable transportation for people that travel, or places they can live.
Correct.
That's a good point.
That's the other.
So not just traveling by car, but also by transit.
Yep.
Bike network, pedestrian networks, and tying all that in.
Are you currently requiring the setbacks to allow for a loop or
Jane. What's the current set? I thought we,
60? That is a conversation that can be had there. Should
Right.
that be greater for certain types of developments, certain zoning, or specifically along this corridor? 60. But is it 60 all the way on 9?
No, yeah.
It's no responsibility, it's not going down the road. So you'll have different setbacks based on different zoning issues. So the further you go west, the setbacks vary. Correct, for existing dwellings along 9, but new commercial is 60. New commercial on 9 is correct all the way there. And then this group of recommendations, potential change along. What do you need for a dual?
Steve.
Which point,
I don't know.
what would you be looking at? 20 feet? With
Depends on
the
the meeting.
rest of the organization, you have to do with the trail and the sidewalk.
Right,
Utilities.
I don't know, off the top of my head, I'm not really.
but, okay, so what we're not asking for like the numbers from you all, we're just asking for, should we be having this conversation?
Yeah.
Is this a conversation
You have to-
or recommendation you could make for DelDOT and the county to have that conversation? Let's start finding out what we do need.
I think that's what we're hearing. You can't have the engineering
Right.
problem
Yeah.
today, but, with this, with the support of a group like this, as we move through our process, I think that, you know, we can tackle the challenges that we have to tackle. There can be conversations with the county in terms of, you know, future setbacks. Obviously, there would have to be a lot of right of way purchased at this point because we don't have a lot of land, but let's not solve those problems now. I want to, again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but how, you know, with the trucks that you have, I mean, what are you telling your truck drivers as far as 9? What are you hearing from your guys or gals about driving on 9? Do they avoid it?
They went right off a 9, so they can only do it to a certain point. Obviously, they hated it in the summertime. You know, for our business, the trucks can't sit still. So because of the cargo we're carrying, they have to be constantly moving due to temperatures. So a lot of them will take back roads to avoid that congestion and within cities. So a lot of homeowners are not real happy with that because we got trucks flying down back roads that really probably shouldn't be there, but we'll see alternatives settle around.
Right, see, it's a similar discussion in emergency vehicles, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. You gotta get where you need to get to. You're gonna do what you have to do, but if somehow 9 could accommodate your trucks, you probably just assume a straight line.
Well, they would love to stay on
Right,
a 9 versus the back.
okay. Let's finish up here, Steve.
Yeah. This is sort of the extent of our official project limits. We can talk about the other intersections through here. 9 Mulberry Knoll, also a CTP project, recommended by the 5 Points Working Group. It will be include extension of Mulberry Knoll Road from Cedar River to US 9 and Old Vine.
You can step back to the map,
Yeah.
please. We're missing including an image, but essentially Mulberry Knoll Road as it stands is down here. And it would basically be continuing that through all the way up until 9. So right now, you really just have Plantation Road as a parallel route to 1. The extension of Mulberry Road would add another parallel route to provide more of that interconnectivity grid network and disperse the traffic throughout the area.
All the way to 20.
Yes,
Yes,
it does.
so that would.
And it
tie
goes
all the way
south
to
of
29 all the way down to
Is it there?
24.
I mean, I don't.
So the road, the road is down here, right, currently between 24 and 23, I believe. So it would continue north there. So Mulberry, if you look
Yeah,
at
it only
Mulberry
goes-
Knoll, you'll see it on the map.
Cedar Grove, it's
Cedar
further
Grove,
south.
thank you.
Yeah.
South of
That last section.
Yeah.
And that is, again, development incoming to that area would be responsible for that largely.
And we have had a development come and speak with us. There's nothing official from them yet. But they will be required to build one of the 2 preliminary concepts that were developed from the Mulberry Knoll Extension Study. So
And that's available on Build-Up website. So when you all received, we'll be sending out a PowerPoint. And you'll notice things are hyperlinked on these slides. So if you are interested in seeing the drawings, you can just click on the links and check those out. But there's a great example of a new roadway to promote safety, alleviate congestion. That will include side paths too for people walking and biking.
And all the way at Old Vine Boulevard, we have, that's the widening project. So the widening will carry through Old Vine, there's a new signal in operation there, I believe. And we will have officially 2 travel lanes in each direction as part of that project. All the way.
Yeah, and just, I think most of you are aware of the Plantation Road project. Seeing nods, but more slide with the drawing. So coming in, so here's 9 on the upper part of our screen. And 1 coming down. So Malfunction Junction, I think many of you know it. There will be a new round, so the current road alignment is here, and then you get stuck in this little thing. So having a new roundabout in here, this is really gonna alleviate a lot of the backup. But the really big piece too is if you are heading on the 9, instead of having to come down to 5 Points, you're going to be able, if you're southbound, to peel off where the hardware store used to be and continue on your way. So that is going into construction pretty much now. So that's gonna be working with the contractor to alleviate impacts in the summer months, but that's incoming. So
and the only thing we did not address, and if Pam can speak to it real quick, is the Nassau Road. I believe that we have had that resolved.
Yes, well, the Nassau and Route 9 will be included as single.
Okay.
Route 8.
And is Nassau becoming a public use road or it's,
It is not yet.
Okay.
But the plan is for like that portion to be dedicated to Delta, but.
Still working the details.
But
Gotcha.
Eventually, that, as part of the Ken Logan PID, the plan is to connect that.
Great, yes, thank you. So there'll be a signal, thanks to Redner's, there'll be a signal at Nassau Road now. And then she's saying part of that road is going to be dedicated to DelDOT for public use. And then per the Henlopen TID, which the county and DelDOT signed up on in 2019. That's one of the recommendations that the full road will become public use road.
Will those signals all be interconnected then?
I'm sorry, well,
Will those signals all be interconnected?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
yes, oh, yes, absolutely. And if you've ever met Gene Donaldson from our TMC, he's brilliant. And he watches those signals like a hawk. I mean, I just picture him every time I'm down there, like sitting on top of those signals, looking at what's going on.
I'm gonna sort of wrap this up here a little bit. You know, we've heard a lot here. You know, it doesn't, to you all, it may not seem like we've heard a lot. We've heard a lot. Certainly interconnectivity, something we've heard, coordination with the county in terms of, you know, working with them both in terms of advancing maybe some of the requirements, but additional coordination with them. I mean, I heard a clear theme of utilization somehow of Route 9, that, you know, whether it's needed now, it's going to be needed at some time. Let's start working on it now so that we can preserve what we can preserve and figure out what the obstacles are going to be. You know, my senior year yearbook quote was, the sooner you get behind, the more time you have to catch up. So, you know, I feel like Route 9, I mean, let's already try to catch up before we get too far behind. Yes, Scott.
Sorry, Andrew, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just had a Cool Spring, and I feel like a stupid question. What's the latest across, Louis Georgetown trail crossing solution? What's been talked about at?
I believe it's just on the ground at Fisher, Pam, isn't that, we just have the at-grade crossing at the Fisher signal for the trail. Do you have any more information on the private initiative that was happening?
Yeah, there is a group that is looking at.
Yeah.
That's through the development.
The developer, right? Because I just think ultimately, I didn't have this one, the tunnel out on the bridge route.
No, I don't know, I got it.
Okay. I was still thinking, yeah, just.
There's challenges for both.
Sure.
Salisbury University just did a tunnel and it's really amazing looking. They've got kind of the solar generated infrastructure, so. Oh, right, okay, that makes sense, sure.
No,
No, you're fine.
we're gonna talk about, we got to Cool Spring, and I just thought that's.
No, that's a good.
I mean, that has so many repercussions in itself.
So, any other thoughts on the quarter as a whole? Anything that didn't come out that, you know, you want to share? Yeah,
I just want to go back to interconnectivity, because I hear what Glenn says and I hear what Brian says. If the interconnectivity is designed in, then you're not weaving through, it's a road. But that's a different thought process. It's not, let's just take this last line out and we'll connect this last line to the next. Well, it's not that.
so are you saying that's like, you know, again, developers are gonna do what they're required to do, right? And so your point is like, let's try to make that part of the approval process, that there has to be interconnectivity that's sort of thoughtful.
Yeah, it works.
A good example would be Knowles Creek, Thomas Farmer Drive in Canton, where the Walmart is. That is a throughway and it works flawlessly with the one exception of.
The Walmart got blocked.
With the one exception of the development said, no, you can't come in, you can only come out, but aside from that.
The example I was gonna use was actually is it Park Road? Yeah, that goes back to the University of Delaware's campus, because then the developments are off of Park Road, right? And so that's interconnect. That is what I think he's talking about, where you have those developers start building that road. And then they build the development off there. So then the developments aren't technically interconnected, but they are. So it's.
And just something, not to get too in the weeds, but we've heard from some people that it works. If you had two two developments are gonna be interconnected. If you buy in that development, part of your settlement is that you sign off that you know those two are interconnected, and that way, when they begin to interconnect, you cannot then go to the county and
That's
say you
what I
cannot do
thought.
this.
That if everybody did that, that would be great.
Okay, and I think they know that.
Tell that, we do promote all interconnectivity. And then, as you guys said, when development happens, it gets established, and then new one comes in, and that goes to the field, and then we're like, we don't want those people that, you know, it's for saving for people. You know what I mean, that's very. That would be great. if that.
So I want to respect everyone's time. I know there's been long days. First of all, you know, after this meeting, if there are things you want to stress or highlight, send us an email. You know, doesn't have to just be tonight that we hear your comments. If you want to go home and review the information and send us an email with different ideas, please do. I want to move us along to public comment at this point. Okay, is there anyone that wants to add anything for public comments there, Jared?
I really appreciate the one.
Jared, come
Closer so
forward.
the speakers-
We want to make sure the owl picks you up.
Okay. So I wanted to, I really appreciate the person in the blue for your name, sorry. Chuck Dower, man. I appreciate your comment about how when you driving your bus, it needs to stop and it kind of stopped everything around. And I walk home, that's the best part of my walk home is the fact that sometimes I get a bus that stops and I can just kind of shut my brain off and feel safe walking through. Like across that road. I did appreciate your.
It's safety for our kids when they cross these roads. You know, unfortunately, we have kids that cross on 9. We have kids that cross on 24. We try not to. But, you know, in talking about what we're talking about, we're looking at safety in the big picture, and even that safety affects when we do have to cross these kids. So,
And not just kids.
And Jared, Jared, do you mind just again introducing who you are so people understand the context of your comment?
So I'm Jared with Darts, I'm a planner, so I have to figure out where buses go and where they stop. And understanding and, you know, being a pedestrian is very important for, you know, planning routes and understanding kind of how hard it is to get across the street and that being discouraging for someone who wants to even bother taking the bus. So
Great.
that's kind of where that's coming from.
Real quick too, just for the school districts, please always reach out to DelDOT if you need anything from our end. Woodbridge just reached out to us during the Bridgeville Greenwood initiative to say, hey, we have the early childhood center that sits on 13, but it's in the town of Greenwood. We don't have the school zone signs and we don't have a signal to get the buses off our campus. So anytime you all have a need, make sure you reach out, whether it's me or traffic folks, they're the ones who actually are going to handle that kind of thing. But please make sure you reach out to us and ask for those things.
Yes. And again, introduce yourself again.
Sure, I'm Joe Esposito, work for you guys, an engineering consultant. And early part of the discussion, we were talking about truck 9, you know, that portion of 9 and the truck 9 Park Avenue, you know, I used to work at the Delaware Coastal Business Park. And that road's, you know, narrow and kind of twisty and turny. And I'm not sure if the improvements currently planned for truck 9, where they realigned if they're going to widen that and make that more accessible or high speed or anything like that. But it seemed logical to me to consider carrying that across 113 to really tie into, I know this is beyond the scope of this area, but it contemplates to tie into the western part of, you know, 9404 west of Georgetown, so that that becomes effectively a bypass of downtown Georgetown, because there's only so much of the utilize or improve your capacity going through the town of Georgetown. If that could be a higher speed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's one of the things the data maybe showed with all the traffic taking 9 and staying on 9, is that would be a logical sort of connection. I think it's probably beyond that scope of the project, it's not already started, but that could be something that sort of goes into our notes as a potential.
As a planning study.
bypass.
Okay, I do have a couple public comment from folks who are attending online. In the name of spirit of being kind and sensitive, I'm going to read them. From Ronald and Charlie, they both are curious as to whether there will be a traffic light at Midas Conway and Route 9. Jen, would you like to speak to that, or Pam?
I don't know about it.
I think there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and not only is there a traffic signal coming, I believe they just did the lane improvements when the repavement was just done.
Yeah, so.
Is
they're
that
doing
right?
some-
Yes.
Yeah, they're doing incremental improvements and I know a full signal.
A full signal's on its way.
is Upcoming this calendar year.
And they can always go on the Delta projects. portal.
The signal would probably be there. Hold on, let me,
Let's go to the next.
Okay.
I'll pull it up, but go ahead. Yep.
Sounds good. So those were 2 questions, and if you have any more, you know where to find us. Also, some comments from Mr. Fisher, supporting dualization of 9. And also had a question for Dorothy, asking for clarification of the statement. The state does not support development in level 4 areas. Does that mean the state opposes additional development or just that the state will not help fund transportation improvements for level 4?
So as I said before, the investments, the state strategy, policies for state. Strategy for state policies and spending talks about how the state will spend their money in each area, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In level 4, we are focused on preservation, agriculture, and health, safety, and welfare. So we do oppose or object to development in level 4 because it is not where we are spending money for the infrastructure.
And just a side note to that, if we have to spend money for infrastructure because of things that come up that are emergency situations, that then takes away from the other levels, which are around your municipalities, which are what we want to support, where we want to support that group.
And I would just tell everyone to, on our website on stateplan.delaware.gov is the strategies, and you can read the whole document and it breaks down the levels as to what state priorities for spending would be at each level. I encourage you to take a look.
Pam was correct. If you go onto del.gov and click on projects, in the left-hand column, there is a traffic signal program, but you have to scroll down to find it.
Learn something new.
Yeah, I didn't know it was there.
It's up. I would like to note for those of you who left other comments or questions in the question Q&A, we will be documenting those and distributing them to everyone, just so everyone has them, but they largely were covered by what was discussed.
We're gonna wrap up. Sorry, we went a few minutes late. In terms of next steps, you can see up in terms of what our next steps are. We're gonna continue to focus on the safety capacity and multimodal improvements in sub 113. Again, I mentioned, sending us feedback, continuing to do that. There are survey questions and meeting materials that we posted to the project website, del.corridors.committee.com. And we want, not just your feedback, but as we when we brought you on, we want you to talk to your colleagues. I know that's not easy to do. You don't just go out to lunch and say, yeah, let's talk about, transportation and so forth. But, we all know people who are maybe more inclined to be interested in this stuff, maybe chat with them or at least direct them to the website.
There's cards that's on the table on your way out, postcards.
And then in terms of our schedule, we're gonna have our final meeting of this group. That's when you guys get the big checks. So, that's what? No, oh, that's right. But we do hope everyone can kind of come wrap up this process on March 13th, so 4 weeks from today. And we will, we will have our work program. We'll have some kind of a draft. We'll have something to share with you that will then be shared with the public at the public workshop. So we really hope you all can come because whatever we put in there, it's not going to be right. It's not, that's going to be a work in progress. So we're going to want your feedback to help make it better before it kind of continues on. So again, thank you to everyone.
Thank you
think that's our
all
last
very
slide,
much.
right?
Thank you.
And workshop is yet to be scheduled, but will, depending on how much feedback we get from you in March, will be late this spring.
Yeah.
And we'll be done, hopefully scheduled at a time most of you can make it and encourage attendance.
So thanks again, everyone. Get home safe. Grab a cookie.
Thank you. Yes.